Oh, there's people waiting. You guys are really bored if you're waiting for me. Anyway, welcome to the second edition of, I don't know what to name this yet. I guess we're just going to call it EAA Live for now. But again, the whole idea of this is being able to do something I haven't done yet, which is bringing in people from the industry, not just harness racing, but the equine industry in general, but have something they want to tell everybody. And tonight, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised in the Midwest and maybe even the rest of the country. They all know of this place. But before I get to it, I need to read a disclaimer now because we're legit. The views and opinions expressed by the guests appearing on Equine Advocacy Alliance live streams are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the views, positions, or policies of Equine Advocacy Alliance. We are not responsible for any statements, claims, or opinions made by our guests. And then go on and say, without the express written consent of the NFL, you cannot watch the whatever. Anyway, so we have got a gentleman who is the former treasurer of the Warren County Agricultural Society and is now just a member of the board. I've been getting blips and blurbs about this for about a little over a year, maybe, about things going on out there with the horsemen, with some particular horsemen in particular, things that I'm not going to comment on or make any judgment. It's not my place anymore. But these are the people who are involved that care, and you may not agree with what they have to say, but their heart's in the right place. So on the line, I've got Casey Fodor. Fodor, right? Casey?
That's it.
Got it. I keep saying Fodor, like I'm making you from a different planet.
It's okay. My whole life's been like that.
So I'd spoken to a few people. I had gotten wind of what was going on with you a little bit. And then we finally spoke. I said, like anyone else, if you do want to use this platform to address whatever situation it is that you want to address, the floor is yours for as long as you need it. I just asked for some notes and a bulleted cheat sheet, which you sent to me, and I'm looking at it right now. So let's start with why. Let's try to just, in a few seconds, why do you need to get this out to everybody?
Well, first, I want to say that what I'm saying is I'm speaking on my behalf, not on the behalf of the Warren County Agricultural Society. This is my opinion, not theirs. So it's been a bumpy road. We're about up on a year, but about a year ago, we tried to raise the stall rent from 125 to 200. Financially, we were in a very bad spot. Past due utility bills. We were behind on getting the manure hauled out of there. I mean, we were in a bad spot. So I made the motion to raise the stall rent to $200.
Now, to be clear, Casey, the Fairgrounds, this is the former Lebanon racetrack that everybody knew.
That's correct.
And now it operates on its own. It stands on its own. Does it receive any subsidy other than what your tenants pay?
We get a little bit of money from the commissioners, under $5,000 a year. We do get some grants, but as far as guaranteed money every year, it's not a significant amount.
Okay, how many stalls are on in the facility?
Ooh.
Okay, let me ask you this. Do you know how many stalls you rent?
So that varies. That number goes up and down depending on if they are racing at Miami Valley, if they're racing at Dayton.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be anywhere from 250, 300, I would say, would be really, really pushing it.
So it's got a pretty decent population.
Well, Yeah, and that's part of the struggle, I feel like, when you look at some of the other fairgrounds that might only have 100 horses there,
Right.
cost-wise.
All right. So it's a self-sustaining facility, and now pick up where you were. You were having trouble collecting store rent.
Well, we raised it to 200, and that got delayed. There was talk of maybe someone wanting to rent the whole facility, so that went back and forth. And then we got new board members that came on, and it was brought back up at a meeting, and the resolution was, well, let's drop it down to 150. Everyone can be happy, but we'll require an ACH or a credit card form on file to make sure we get paid.
Right.
Seems reasonable in this day and age.
That's good business. That's business.
Well, at the next meeting, next month, only 4 people filled those forms out. Well, that's very frustrating. We were still having the problems collecting rent. So I made the motion to, you know what? Let's be done with this. This isn't working. At that point, I was the treasurer, and funny story about that, less than 12 hours after I became treasurer, the office manager calls me up and says that Duke Energy is here to shut our natural gas off. What do we do? So that's the financial situation we were in. It was serious.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's not like this decision at the time was made because of dislike for someone or dislike of the industry. It was made for the financial sake of it. Nothing more.
Now, I'm going to stop you for a second. This is something I kind of thought might happen. Do you know a gentleman named Jeffrey Johnson?
I do not.
All right. So there's a person, at least that's what the name is, because people can actually ask questions in real time. Now, he's stating, as you were speaking, that 90% was collected. That's a lie. How do you respond to that?
I would have to go back and look at notes, but I know at one point it was a big deal when like 94% was collected after all this. So I would say that on a monthly basis, we probably didn't collect 90%.
Okay. And how much would that have left outstanding in dollars, do you figure? If you
I don't have all that. I mean, that was a year ago. I don't have all that in front of me.
Okay. And to keep, to balance what you're talking about here, when you say that certain utilities weren't being paid for, the reason being that the coffers of the training facility were.
Well, I think there was 2 issues there. There was the lack of some of them paying, and then the increase in utilities, and our manure went up. So this is going down another rabbit hole. So at the time, we had a executive director, and I got emails to back this up. His son hauled the manure, and his son's contract was up. And they wanted to renew the contract with them. Let's just renew it. And I threw a fit. I hadn't been on the board long, and I said, this is not how we should conduct business. We have to put this out for bid. We cannot just give the guy a contract. Well, we put it out for bid, and he got it again, but he raised his price significantly. So that was all done legally, and there's been a lot of pushback on that. And we never raised rent when our expenses on manure removal doubled. So it's a compounding problem. And I'm not I'm not going to say that everything in the past was ran wonderfully, because that's not the case. But we were trying to get our head above water. And there was lots of conversations, and I mentioned at a meeting one time, I asked the question, I said, so what if your guys' purses increased? And a lady said, well, that shouldn't matter. And I was just trying to use that as an example. And, you know, it's like, well, you guys can win more money. That technically, I don't want to say it's a subsidy, but if the law is passed that says someone has to give you more money, it's a subsidy. But you guys aren't willing to pay more to rent stalls.
Now,
and then there was comments made that, you know, you're comparing renting a stall at a private barn and they have indoors arenas and this and that. I said, well, you guys have a racetrack that's maintained. And for what the fairgrounds spends maintaining the racetrack, there's no, I'm not going to say there's no, but most riding stables, they're not spending $15,000 a year on arena footing. It just comes down to, you know, you try to work together. Yes, there needs to be a price increase. And I think when they raised it to 125 from 100 years ago, that it really should have been raised to 150, but they did not want to do that.
you have in the note here that when the idea of 200 was floated, the horsemen lost it.
Oh, I mean, it passed. But we had a meeting with a group that they created called the Old Lebanon Raceway Association or something. And it was not a very productive meeting. They had, I don't know if they elected, nominated or what, a gentleman to be their leader. And he just happened to be some kind of union rep. And, you know, he was making these demands and it was like, well, you can't even have a conversation with us. So that went nowhere, and nothing was done with that.
And it also says that there were board members there that are also tenants.
Well, at one time we did have a board member that was renting stalls, and when it was raised to 200, she made the comment that, well, I can't afford to rent stalls here anymore. And the conflict of interest has been very frustrating. And the Ohio Ethics Commission doesn't want to get involved. You know, it's like any government organization. They write all these rules, but when it comes time for them to enforce them, it doesn't seem like they really want to do it. So now, the eviction passes. So immediately, Antonia Storer comes on every TV station she can get on. But one important thing, Antonia failed to disclose that her mother was a board member, which was very frustrating. You know, she made the comment on one TV interview that I've tried to reach out to board members, but none of them will reply. Well, geez, Antonia, why don't you just, you know, I'm sure your mom's been talking to you. So that was very frustrating. I mean, and to be honest, there's a lot of really good people that have horses up there that I have a lot of respect for. And then there's some of them that, you know, let's be honest here. You're 40 some years old and your mom's on the board protecting you. Grow up. So we're in a different situation now. The fairgrounds is in the process of getting purchased by the city, and they will be their own entity and have to support themselves. So, but the conflict of interest stuff. I mean, we have a board member who's actually the president now, Chris Lutmer. It's not right for someone who has been paid over $50,000 in the past 5 years to perform services related to the harness track to vote on issues related to the harness enforcement.
Mhm.
How can that be ethical? But whenever anything like that's brought up, you're almost singled out as well. That's not right to bring that up.
And just to be fair, because it's brought up again in the chat, other sources of revenue,
Oh, we do have other sources of revenue.
the cell phone tower and event center.
Yeah, we do. We rent out event center, storage, other buildings and stuff. But at the end of the day, we have for-profit businesses operating on publicly owned property that is exempt from property tax. There is not a single business owner in the world that wouldn't love to have that deal. I mean, just being honest here, I own a business. I have to pay property taxes.
Mm-hmm.
They're operating businesses, plain and simple.
Now, you also bring up politics and media pressure.
Oh, yeah. So this is my opinion. So I believe that Antonia's mom has a pretty good relationship with some local politicians, just from her regular job. And, they immediately interjected themselves into this, where we had a commissioners meeting and it was clear one commissioner, no matter what, we were in the wrong. He made the comment that racing at Miami Valley would not survive if the horsemen weren't at Warren County. I went back and looked through all the entries. Less than 15% of the entries were horses from the fairgrounds. That's not a majority of them. It's 15%.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got pressure from Scott Hagemeyer. He's on the OHHA board. He wanted to make it sound like it was this easy thing to go out and get judgments against these guys that owed us money, and then they wouldn't be able to race. Well, Scott had a hard time understanding that we could not represent ourselves in court because we're not an individual. We're an organization. So we hired an equine attorney, and she did a good job. We did get some of the people to pay. We didn't get all of them to pay. And we still had to eat some of those legal fees.
Right.
And then on top of that, you get a judgment against somebody. The Ohio Racing Commission has their hand out. They want $100 to file a judgment for a stop race on someone that owes you money, which I find a little ridiculous given we're a nonprofit organization. So, I'm going to be labeled an asshole or whatever else. That's fine. You're not going to hurt my feelings. So then, as things go on, you find out that, some people shouldn't throw rocks in a glass house. When it was brought to my attention that Antonia's store was listed in the Fishman invoices, I looked. I'm not going to tell you I didn't. And to see the amount of drugs she bought was sickening. And not all those drugs you could say are illegal, but it was illegal for her to purchase them without a prescription from a vet that wasn't licensed in Ohio.
That's true everywhere.
Yes. And then when your boyfriend or fiance is mentioned in a sworn testimony that they introduce somebody to this vet. I mean, this is not what needs to be going on at a fairgrounds where the fair's held, 4-H events. That's not what the primary purpose of the fairgrounds is for. It's for promoting agricultural and 4-H youth development at the end of the day. That's the primary purpose of the grounds.
Is that the way that they're filed under their, what are they, 501c what?
I believe a 3.
A 3? And they could, well, they can take donations with it, which are tax deductible?
Yes.
All right.
We are a nonprofit.
Right. Depending on the level is, you know, I think 501c5 is non-tax deductible, but either way, when in the statement filed with the IRS, it says the mission is for education, further development, and support of agriculture, blah, 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 blah. I didn't look it up.
I mean, like this year before fair, I decided that I was looking at the race entries and I knew who was behind. So I called up Lisa Schwartz. She's with the Ohio Colt Racing Association. And I asked her, I said, are we able to keep people from racing that are behind on stall rent? And she says, absolutely, you're the permit holder.
So you can keep people from, it's called the financial irresponsibility rule is what it's called either in USTA or state commissions. So you would have to go, for you to enforce that, you would have to get the OHHA to back that up. Am I right?
Not necessarily. That's not how it was presented to me from her. So there was only a handful of them, and I made them aware. And I got screamed at for doing that, which I thought was very frustrating given that all these people that owed us money, when it came down to keeping them from racing, they came in and paid. Why another board member would be upset about that situation is what's their primary goal then? Are they protecting them? You can speculate that because if they know all the rules, they should have known that rule.
Now, this is while you were treasurer, correct?
Yes, this is when I was treasurer.
So that was your job.
Yes.
Which kind of goes without saying, but I'll say it so people understand. So you were just doing your job.
Yeah, you know, you have the same group of people for the most part that get behind and don't want to pay, want to argue about it. And this was the time that we could do something to make a point. I had support from the Warren County Harness Horsemen's Association. I spoke with their president, Brent Tarter. He backed me 100% on that decision. And, you know, me and Brent might be on different sides of the table on some issues, but at the end of the day, Brent's a really nice guy. I've never had a problem with Brent. He's always been straight up, nice, respectful. And I feel like I've treated him the same way too.
Okay, now I'm looking.
But at the end of the day, you know, if the Ohio Racing Commission isn't going to look into these people that were purchasing these drugs, what good are they anyways then?
Well,
I've tried making several public records requests with the Ohio Racing Commission and always get the same answer. Those are not records we keep. And are you guys even keeping records then? There's always some reason they can't comply.
now you go on with the bigger picture in your notes.
Yeah, if you look at what betting the total handle was in 2024, it's very close, within $1 million of what it was in 1952. So if you calculate inflation on what it was in 52, we're not even close. And that's frustrating to see that all these subsidies are thrown this way to promote this when clearly the public interest is not there.
And so everybody knows, you said that you technically really aren't super involved in harness racing per se.
No, I no interest at all besides what was going on at our fairgrounds. I mean, the only harness races I've ever watched are the ones that we have on Mondays at our fair.
Right. And the reason for you put in the position was to take care of all these issues. Am I correct?
I mean, I wasn't put in a position to take care of that issue. I was the treasurer.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And when you see the money going in and the money going out.
So you acted upon, with the numbers and transparency, with absolutely no bias whatsoever. No,
I own horses. I don't own harness horses. I'm not it's cruel. I'm not on that end of the spectrum there where horse racing's animal abuse or anything like that. As a financial picture, you question, they want to say it's this great investment for Ohio. I went through, because the Ohio Racing Commission couldn't give me these numbers, I went through the top 1,000 earning harness horses from January 1st to, for some reason, July 19th is when I hit 1,000. And 50.2% of the earnings either go to horses owned 100% out of state or partially owned by someone out of state. So when they want to talk about this is a great investment for the state. Maybe if all that money was getting spent back in the state of Ohio, it would be. But a large portion of this money is going out of state. There's a lot of horses that are trained in Ohio that are owned by people all over the country.
Mm-hmm. And now you're being a little more focused on another issue, and I'm going to match that up to do you know a Karen Heberlin?
Yeah, I know Karen Heberlin. I know who she is.
All right. She just typed into the chat that the county gets $3 million from Miami Valley Gaming and Racing.
Yeah, that's the county. That's not the fairgrounds.
Okay, so
that's we don't see any of that money.
All right, so that's money.
And if we go back to the Miami Valley Gaming deal, 50% of the horses raced at Miami Valley are not from the fairgrounds. In the meet this winter, it was under 15%. And if Karen would like to sit down and look through all the information on all the entries and who the trainers are, I'd be more than happy to sit down with her.
All right, she's making the assertion. This is typical in the argument, which I'll play a little bit of. Oh no, I'm saying
what you need to know. That's Corwin Nixon's daughter. So just to throw that out there.
Okay, I mean, I get all this, but I'm going to repeat just what she said now, even though I don't want to go into the bouncing back and forth, but I will address certain comments made in the chat. And this is typical of, let's say, the people in harness racing, where, well, harness racing supports vets, feed, and it contributes to society. It kicks back economy and all that. Yes, but it comes at a price.
Yes.
And that price is called welfare. So kicking money back to a state, not unlike a lot of other states that I see, when you're kicking back 20% of what a state gives you, you're not doing anybody any favors, although it does keep people employed. So
I didn't know that it was the government's job to create businesses at a loss to employ people.
Well, what she's saying is the money. Well, the only way to address that is it brings up a whole different conversation. does Miami Valley support itself with its handle, which is not within this discussion. That's why that's why I'm giving Karen I'm repeating what she's saying, but
does Miami Valley get enough in its handle to pay the persons out? And I am going to go out and probably say absolutely not.
And that in some way, shape, or form that happens everywhere. But I'm just I want to say to her, respectfully that, you're opening up a whole different can of worms and a different discussion by bringing that up. If you put everything in one big blender without looking at the actual source of revenue, you're not comparing apples to apples here. What you're talking about is the operation of the Warren County Fairgrounds. Am I right?
Yes. And things after, I will say this, after, we let the horses stay, the payments did get better because people knew we were done screwing around.
Well, there's no secret, and I know from personal experience, operating a training facility, just let's call it that. The bleeding never ends. Horsemen flip out if the track isn't right. I'm sure they're in there fixing stalls, maintaining the facility as it is, paying the utilities to keep it going. To compare it to an equine facility with riding arenas makes absolutely no sense. You're renting the facility for the housing of the animals and specifically to be able to train them, which means track number one. Is there anything else at the fairgrounds? There's no pool or anything like that. Equicizers, nothing like that.
No,
no turnout, nothing like that.
No.
It's just set up like a typical racetrack.
They can rent stalls, tack rooms, and round pens.
And that's another thing. People understand when you rent, you're renting for a reason. So you need a place to stable.
Yeah.
And to me, as someone that was around the game long enough to understand, you need a place to stable. You need a facility that's operable and a track that's safe that you can train or whatever. And really, your biggest issue was getting paid. Am I correct?
Yeah. We have to at least, break even, and realistically, even though we're a nonprofit organization, we have to make a profit, be profitable, but that's going away where that's not going to be our baby anymore. That's going to be the Warren County Harness Horsemen's Association. They're going to have to handle everything. Utilities are getting split from what I've heard, and they're going to have their own side, and they're going to be sink or swim.
Are they operating on a shortfall right now, or are they behind, or has it leveled out?
I'm not sure. I'm not treasurer anymore. So
how long ago did
we got a new treasurer at the August meeting? Prior to that, we were getting better. I would say we were still not 100% breaking even with the cost of manure removal, staff, utilities. The amount of water used is mind-blowing given the water trucks. Our water bill up there, $3,000-$4,000 a month.
Yeah, because you even mentioned that when they were fighting the increase, that the leader of the whatever group this was that they put together.
Yeah, he wanted to try to revitalize some old wells that haven't been used since who knows when, and it's like, dude, come on. Like, what's that cost to get going? But things are, in my opinion, we're going in the right direction, letting them make it work or not work. And it'll be interesting to see what they have to charge for stall rental when they're paying all the bills. Because I don't think it's going to go down to $100 a stall. You know,
Are they looking?
nothing's getting cheaper these days.
I was going to say, are they looking to decrease the stall rent? Is that?
I don't think so. They're going to have to, they're going to have to be profitable to take care of everything. But, having someone on our grounds that is tied to a federal case and is listed as a client, and anyone can go on there and see the invoices. And I ask anybody that questions it, it's all public information. Go look at all the information from that case. It is mind blowing. She just wasn't buying vitamins and minerals. She's buying, you name it. I mean, that guy was like an open drugstore.
Well, there's, again, that problem rests with commissions. If anyone's been following what I've been doing as well, there are horsemen out there who are still competing, who, if by the rules and precedents that have been laid out there, first by the federal government, a very small select group of commissions who've had some action on it, by other of these individuals who've actually gone to prison for things that people are still have done that are still on the outside and competing, that issue lies with our commissions, governing bodies, and oversight. So USTA, AGCO, and every state commission. Now, if it's a case of you feel as though there are individuals that shouldn't be allowed the property, where is that line drawn? Would that would have to be taken up because it is private, a nonprofit?
That would be up to, I guess.
Well, let me ask you this: do you have to be licensed to be on the facility? Meaning,
no,
you don't.
Nope.
Okay, so there's problem one. The OHHA does not have jurisdiction over the fairgrounds.
No, I mean, there's some stalls that have been rented out to people with riding horses, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like we have a situation where a trainer got way behind. We got a judgment against him.
Okay, that's
but
legit.
The loophole was he's not renting the stalls anymore. The owner is. But this guy who owes us all this money is still there every day training horses.
Now that's different.
You know what I mean? And
that's like a trainer coming up positive, and then he puts his wife or brother down, and he's still there training the horses. That, to me, is wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Because,
we've had little backing as far as removing people from property. I mean, I'm not going to mention names or go into it, but, this is a fairgrounds. We have a registered sex offender on the property, and there's nothing we can do about it. And realistically, that's ridiculous to even think that by law he's allowed to be on that property operating a business. But there's nothing we can do about it. I have sent emails, I've talked to people, and just by law he's allowed to be there.
So it's a lot of, you got a lot of little, how could you define this? It's not that they're unique to what you've got the setup there, but if you look at individually, what's the legality with people that have, on a registry? Are they allowed to be on that property? Are they being exposed to individuals that they shouldn't be around? According to their release, that's one thing. If there's a trainer there who ran up stall rent and was being, the person he probably screwed the most was his owner, because if the owner was paying him to pay the store rent, right?
Exactly. And that's what did happen.
So the owner is now down as the tenant renting the stalls. He didn't pay the back rent, the owner.
No, he didn't pay the back rent.
So right now the facility eats that loss until you would have to just get a judgment against the guy.
Oh, we do have a judgment. We did, from my knowledge, the check has been mailed to the Ohio Racing Commission, but I haven't seen any entries. The day we got the judgment, I looked to see when he was entered, and he was entered the next day.
But here's the thing again.
Rating.
But does the Ohio Harness Horsemen's Association, the commission, have the authority? If they can, obviously they should be able to. I would think you got to enforce financial irresponsibility, meaning you owe an individual in, let's just say in the industry, farrier, veterinarian, training center, whatever, feed company, whomever, files, wins a judgment. Do you know? I haven't looked it up, but you'd have to look up what the rule is or speak to a presiding judge on whether his entries should be refused until he pays and makes good on the judgment. In New York State, or, we see it listed all the time in the USTA, financial irresponsibility, and they're not allowed to race until they make good on the debt. So whoever it is, that's probably the only way you got to ask the commission.
Well, no, sending the $100 in and a copy of the judgment, they will keep him from racing, which is good.
Okay.
But the cost for us to get there and legal fees.
All right. Attorneys are going to kill you.
Yeah, because the magistrate did not give us legal fees. They didn't have to, so we did not get all those. But we did collect a lot of money. The equine attorney we found, she's pretty good. I was very pleased. But the Ohio Racing Commission really needs to crack down on these people that, if you were buying blood builders or some kind of pain medicine,
well,
even though those invoices are dated a little bit, it makes me question it. Is this stuff still going on today?
Well, again, everybody thinks that, obviously people the honest people of harness racing, the ones that are afraid to speak up, you're never going to hear from. And it all comes down to, again, from where, training centers, private farms, nonprofit facilities, county facilities that are owned, and I guess because it's the Department of Agriculture, it's being operated like any public entity that offers the facility the service for a charge, right?
Mm-hmm.
So really, if it's not in your bylaws when it comes to the type of people who are accepted, whether they're guilty or not, they really have, it would almost be, it might be illegal to refuse them. You know what I mean?
Oh, we went down the road to try to remove some people, and we couldn't really get much help from either the sheriff's department or the city police, because we have a little unique placement of our fairgrounds. It's in the city limits.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I'm saying is the bottom line when it comes to anything that you see regarding, let's say, doping, all right, not abiding by the rules set by the commissions, United States Trotting Association, whatever. You see the way people were punished and or not punished. Really, the only organization that has the authority to act on these people is the racing commission. All right. So when it comes to the private facility, can they be banned because of, if you have the proof, what they have done? I don't think they really can, because that facility is not bound by the rules of the state racing commission. It's a private
Exactly.
facility. So it would be no different than saying, where do you draw the line? It's really just an equine facility or an agricultural facility. It's not a state governed and commissioned facility, meaning that's why the first question I asked you was, do you need to be holding a license in good standing to be able to work on the property? And if the answer is no, they have no jurisdiction over you. None.
You would think, though, if you go and look at the client list that guy had, you would think everybody that raced in the state of Ohio that was on that list would be scrutinized a little bit harder. You would think that. I emailed the Ohio Racing Commission about this subject, and, of course, I didn't hear anything back. And I've been told by people, well, they're not going to do anything about it. And if that's truly the case, what is their job? Well, what are they actually doing then?
Well, that's the thing, and it comes down against integrity in the industry, and then it takes us a different direction until you wonder why the industry is in the position it is, where your handles are 10% of what your purse account is. That there's racetracks literally surviving off welfare, and the industry reflects that. That's just a whole other battle. I don't know if that's a battle to be made from where you stand. You can, as someone who's concerned for the industry, and take that up with the commission. But as for where you stand, can you, let's say, punish people at the fairgrounds for any of that? You can't.
We have no.
No, you have no authority to do that.
No, but maybe exposing people.
You can do that, and that's a different battle. Not so different, no different than when I posted the let's say the Jeff Gillis wiretaps. And I knew how powerful that was going to be, and it worked. Then I come back with the transcripts and the invoices of other individuals who are, some of the purchases are far worse than guys that went to prison, right? You would think that the USTA, SRIF, their new investigative unit, which I think is a crock of crap, just look at what it's done. The AGCO, I don't think so much, because these guys aren't even racing there, so there's nothing to be done about that. But you look in the state of New York, state of New Jersey, well, not New Jersey anymore. That's pretty much Corral, so he's banned most of those guys. But these individuals who have purchased, and the proof is there, the order, the purchase, the payment, all of it entered into evidence by the FBI into the federal trials, and these guys are still racing.
Yeah.
So what does that say to you? It can't be helped.
Well, it tells me if doping a horse is okay, let's just take this to the next level. Let's put IV catheters in them, and let's put tanks on them with IV pumps and start putting them in classes like race cars. We're going to have top alcohol trotters out there next. You know what I mean?
I think what's happening is the gentleman that I had on last week who lost that horse. This is the story in Oneida County in New York. He says, basically, harness racing is racing toward a concrete wall. And it's just going to hit, and that's the way it's going to end. The individuals, I think what's happening here is you're another person whose heart is in the right place. And you see it much clearer than others who are blinded in the industry, because I understand. They don't want to lose their sport. They don't want to lose their source of income. I know a lot of really good people that I don't talk to anymore. I can't. A lot of people I called friends that I don't talk to anymore. I can't. That may think of me as Satan, but I'm really fighting for them. You're similar to that. You're looking for the betterment of the sport, and maybe, hey, if we do things right, we clean it up. Will it bring back the customers, which are the fans, and more importantly, the bettors? These guys that have been in the business less than 25 years don't understand a harness racing that actually stood on its own.
Well, when you look at the Ohio Racing Commission annual report, it has historical data in it on what the handle was. And don't quote me to it 100%, but back in what was it, the mid to late 90s, the handle was crazy.
And that's the 90s. It was crazier in the 70s and 80s.
But you look at it, and then I think it's the Ohio Green Book has this graph of the total handle over time. And it's terrible. It's a terrible looking graph.
Now I gotta stop you here. And this is where I knew this would happen. You're going to get horsemen coming in on the live chat.
That's fine.
Now, but no. Where I'm going with this is I have offered this and I've posted this. You saw what I do on my group page. All right. Mm-hmm. I have an open invitation to everyone in harness racing, both sides. Right. And I want to read this. So it's set into this video. This is from Karen again. Why can't we hear from the other fair board members? This is Casey's opinion. Okay, Karen, have them contact me and I'll have them on. All right. People have to come forward. You came forward.
Well, having a board member with the conflict of interest come on and talk about it.
Let them do it, because I'll question them too.
Well, the conflict of interest thing has always been, like I said before, a touchy subject.
Now, and I want to make this clear. Anyone who wants to come up and face what you've said and tell their side, everyone is welcome. So I want everyone to understand that I'm listening to you.
Ask Karen Heberlin how much the Nixon family got when the racing went to Miami Valley.
Well, you can ask her because she can hear you.
Well, it's a lot of money. You know what I mean? And the Fairgrounds was left in shambles. Like this is how bad it is. There was a couple barns that were used for harness horses throughout the year, and they'd have to move out for the county fair. When you have 4-H kids cleaning stalls and finding syringes everywhere, give me a break. You know what I mean? That's ridiculous.
Because here's what I would do is, if they really want to have a discussion, the next visit to this would be a Zoom meeting live.
Wow.
If they want to tell their side of the story, I'll give them the floor for it. Go ahead, and I'll listen. I'll have the facts written down also, and see if there's any holes. But in the end, and I say this all the time, especially in harness racing, there's no denying the truth.
No, if you took the VLT money out of the purses, there would be no purses. You know what I mean? They wouldn't be in my opinion, Ohio wouldn't be number one for harness racing if we weren't paying out as much money as we were. No one wants to race for nothing, because the cost of feeding any kind of horse these days, it's not cheap.
Standard, to keep a standardbred going, I defend everyone in the game when it comes to that. It costs a fortune. You add in all the basics, then the unknowns, then if you got a ship, you're not going to survive on $2,500 purses. Those days are over.
So when I buy a horse for my daughter, I know that we're never going to make any money on that thing. I might as well just burn my money. But listen, I'd rather her riding horses than something else. I mean, let's be clear here. Teenage girls, you got to keep them busy.
So here's the way we'll wrap this up then is what do you see, and what is your, let's say, what do you see moving forward?
Well, moving forward, the Ag Society is not going to have to manage stall rental, track maintenance, all that. But moving forward, I would like to see people held accountable by governing bodies for doping horses, for buying illegal drugs. And for someone to want to talk about how bad everyone else is, those invoices look pretty bad. And everyone needs to be made aware of this, and everyone needs to go look at the information. That's what everyone needs to do.
Well, then I think what you got to do then is it's something that needs to be addressed by your board.
Well, there's nothing the board can do about it. That's the issue. And I think this will address the board right now. And, whatever flack I catch from it, that's fine. Like, one thing I'll say is I do a lot to help anybody.
She has a good question here. You ready?
Yeah.
And I'll ask you this way so you can answer this yourself. It says, why is Casey so interested in tearing down harness racing? He has never been involved in it. Now I have an answer in my head to that. But what would your answer be?
Well, I don't have a interest in tearing down harness racing. I have an interest in not subsidizing harness racing. And then when you look at that it's subsidized and then people are cheating, that's even worse. Any industry should be able to support itself to be an industry. At this point, is the ORC, is that the Ohio Racing Charity instead of the commission? Because that's what it's looking like.
And see, now this is why I say what you just said is an eye opener. And I wish people in the industry would understand how others view this industry of harness racing.
Well, it's not just harness racing. It's, the thoroughbred racing, and
right.
We have a limited amount of quarter horse racing here too. But when you tell somebody this information that is not really involved in it, they're like, so the amount of bets don't cover the purse. They're like blown away. And when I looked into this deeper and I started finding this stuff out, it's like, well, how's it really an industry then if it can't support itself?
And this is a discussion that I have constantly. And now I'm going to answer Karen on what her last statement. It's not out of his pocket. Well, here's the problem, Karen. And what you have to understand, and this is, and this is why I feel bad sometimes that they, this is like you got the full hood on with cups or a peekaboo bridle and you can only see straight in front of you. It is an industry that cannot stand on its own, and that's why it is evaporating as quickly as it is. You don't understand how each state is looking to eliminate it. New York State is trying to eliminate it. States are decoupling. Did anybody ever think we were going to lose Pompano Park? Did anyone ever think we were going to lose Freehold Raceway? You could go on and on. Up in Canada, what did we just lose? What did they lose up there? It was on a fairgrounds. They didn't renew their lease. Northville Downs is gone in Michigan. You basically have no harness racing in Michigan. Now they're racing at a fair track and handling $200 a race. It's embarrassing. The whole idea is to be able to self-sustain and thrive.
Well,
You're racing in front of grandstands that are empty. Monticello Raceway closed its grandstand because there's no use for it. The point again, and you're looking at it from a business standpoint. Every casino that buys a racetrack looks at it from a business standpoint. So what is here's her answer, or her next question, and I'm going to answer this one. So what is your solution? When a business loses money, it closes. That's how it works. Ask anybody that works in Sears or any automobile plant. When businesses start losing money, people lose their jobs. You don't have the government always jumping in to save it. All right. Look at what's happening at the Meadowlands. Mr. Garral wants to get rid of the Hambletonian. He's tired of spending out of pocket. Karen, and I don't want them to take this wrong. This is where they don't understand. They think I'm fighting against them. You need to fight for yourselves. Insist that your industry start that self-governing and self-policing that obviously can't do the job. Look at all the criminals still running around in it that are hurting you. Ask anybody on the street if you know what harness racing is. They won't know. If they do know, Garral actually said this in a statement the other day, they're going to say, oh yeah, that's all fixed. And they drug horses and because that's the perception of the public. You're offering a product that the public doesn't want.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say.
No, it's a frustrating and hard conversation to have with someone who is connected to it. That, well, what do you do then? Well, we can't subsidize it. I mean,
well, not forever, because it is slowly being taken away.
And the interesting thing is, a lot of people that support all this, they're against subsidizing everything else, but for whatever reason, it's okay. I know some people that are hardcore conservatives that think that they have no problem with subsidizing this, but they don't want to subsidize other things. And it's like, whoa. And the amount of money that's given to subsidize harness racing, what could that do for a greater amount of Ohioans than just a small group of harness race trainers and owners? That's the other question I want to know.
And that's the perfect way to present that. And that's the way I wish horsemen, Karen, you have to understand that the only people that really care about harness racing are the people involved in it.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
And believe me, I get it, because as a person who loves the animals and loves the sport, I'm disgusted by what's been done to the industry. There is an emotional attachment.
Yeah, and
it's through the horses. It's through a way of life. It's being able to be your own boss. You do it as you please, when you please. You're working with the animals that you love. Your family's involved or whatever. And I get that, but the problem with that is that is not enough. Same way I'm fighting what's going on with the carriage horse industry. In the last 10 days, there has been a complete 180 by most of the politicians that now want to just shut it down. It gets to the point where it's so irreparable that everyone says, yeah, there's no fixing this and there's no more supporting it. It's got to go. When that happens to harness racing, look what I could go on and on and on about the examples of how it's shrinking right in front of our eyes. And instead of screaming, this is all we know how to do, you got to keep giving us money. Oh yeah, well, it doesn't really cost you. It costs everybody, because that's money that could be better, that could be earmarked for something that is far more deserving of those funds that are steered to a dead industry.
The argument they have with that is, well, that comes from the casino. Well, it does come from the casino, but if the casino has to pay that to this group, well, they can pay that to another group then.
Let me ask you this. I'm unfamiliar.
A greater amount of people in a group.
I'm unfamiliar with the laws regarding casinos in Ohio. So is it written that X amount of dollars to have a casino has to be kicked over to the racing end. Is
So I'm going to get crucified on this if I'm wrong.
that? I don't have the answer. I didn't look.
But yeah, but
I'm
you
in
know
New York.
what? Let's go for it. My hands aren't that sore yet.
Well, try if you're gonna, if it might be wrong, it's better to just say we don't know.
I'm pretty sure that there's a 33% tax on casinos. 3% of that goes to the Ohio Racing Commission, and I believe it varies. It's 9 to 11% of the VLT.
So you have video lottery terminals.
Yep.
The same terminology that is used in New York State, that the way they sold it on us on the state here was that X amount gets kicked over to education, and 8% on the profit of each machine gets kicked over by state mandate to tracks. You can only have it a track that offers live racing. Does that sound like what's going on there? Like, do you have freestanding casinos out there? Or are they all at race?
There are a couple freestanding casinos in Ohio.
Now, are they gaming casinos, meaning tables and everything, and at the racetracks?
There's a few of those.
Okay, so it's two separate laws then.
Yes, where Miami Valley doesn't have tables, Dayton doesn't have tables. You know what I mean? They're just slots. But, you know, to wrap this thing up, everyone needs to look at the information. It's out there. It's public.
And, and basically the bottom line that we're getting here, when people are saying, well, he has no involvement in harness racing. And the reason, what I'm saying is you're handling your position from a businessman's point of view.
Yeah.
Period. Numbers.
I own a business, and, if I don't make it, guess what? I'm out of business. Plain and simple. So,
well, and this is a good, even though one gentleman was upset with this, it opens the conversation. Now, you said it from your point of view and where your position was. Doesn't matter how you got there or why you were there. You were there. You saw things that didn't make sense, because probably good, because you don't come from the game. So you're not biased.
No, let's say you took the financials and the subsidies just for harness racing, and let's say you changed it to some other industry, and you did that exercise and presented it to someone that, let's say that anything else was getting handled like that was a for-profit enterprise, people would throw a fit. If any other industry was getting propped up like that.
See, I think that's really, maybe when you gave me your talking points, to better have structured this, it should have been inverted. We should have talked about this first, then the rest, and then it would have made a lot more sense and I get it, but people, and this is something people in harness racing, and again, they don't understand that I'm on their side. The people that aren't the criminals, the people that aren't doing what we've seen, what you've seen in those, in the documents, things that we all see, a lot of people see that happens and they're afraid to talk about it, that it's hurting you, the decent people, and hurting the animals, because that's where I really come from now. I've had it with everything. I only give a shit about the animals. But
what's funny is, I would go up to a barn where I knew the trainer in there, going just to talk, and there'd be another trainer there, and he'd introduce himself, and I would say, well, I'm sure you know who I am. You know what I mean? One of those. And most of the time when I walk away from that situation or that conversation, I'm friends with that trainer. You know what I mean? They're good people. They're not, cussing me. We're not fist fighting. we had a conversation, you know what I mean? Where that's what needs to be had about the whole picture. But it's like taboo to talk about the subsidies, you know, the drug use, the doping, you know, no one wants to talk about it. Well, guess what? Someone's got to do something about it, you know, because like I said, next thing you know, they'll have tanks and IV pumps running these things down the track.
Well, it seems to be, you know, they kid about it and they use the term chemical warfare, and that's what it's come down to. And we see it happen all the time. There's been instances just in the last couple of weeks about, you know, the performance of horses from barn to barn grossly increased with certain people.
You know, I heard there's a new training method out there that you train them 1 cc at a time until you get them where you need them to be.
You know, these are all statements that are made in light, but are actually what's damaging to the industry because nothing's being done about it. And this is, and what I keep, again, I repeat myself, I want to say it again, that if anybody has anything that they want to say in response to this and wants to come on and go on record, just send me a message. This is a totally different approach to all this. It's basically I'm trying to create an open forum because I want to hear the response from the people that say, "Oh, you're just trying to tear down harness racing," and then I'll ask them, "Okay, so explain how that is. What do you mean? What is it that people who are trying to create integrity, accountability, you know, where does it end? You talk about subsidies, and I say it all the time. I'll even use the word welfare. At some point, juicing an industry that's dying, that doesn't create anything, that just bleeds money constantly. All right. When do the states and the politicians, and if the public gets wind of this and they say, "Hey, wait a second, you voted for this," and their constituents are saying, we don't want this. That money should be going somewhere else, especially in a time when people are, you know, just the cost to live now. Why are people, teachers getting paid less? How come first responders don't get paid more? Our military, veterans, you're worried about these people who abuse animals, drug animals, kill horses, cheat the public, and get free money. That's what is happening, and harness racing isn't seeing it. Or at least they're just burying their heads in the sand and riding it out as long as they can till they pull the plug. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense.
I read somewhere, you know, that horse racing is referred to as the sport of kings. So why is the sport of kings getting subsidies? You know what I mean?
All right. Well, even the thoroughbreds are getting subsidies.
Even what? Yeah.
Not to the extent of harness racing. It's in New York State. In New York State, 84% of the purse structure to harness tracks is paid through subsidies.
Wow.
84. To the tune of $240 million across the, what's it, 5 tracks now? No, wait, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tracks. I lose count. Buffalo, Batavia, Vernon, Tioga, Monticello, Saratoga, Yonkers. $240 million a year is paid back, you know, in different ratios to each track, depending on how much they pull through their VLTs. Yonkers, being the biggest, is getting $60 million a year, and they handle $300,000. What was it? I think it was the International Trot Day. They handled $800,000, but they paid over $2 million in purses. $1 million purse for the one. It just doesn't add up, because why would they care when there's no accountability? It's free money.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if there's one soul in the grandstand or $10 in the handle. It doesn't matter. The money's guaranteed. So why should there be accountability or integrity for that matter? Go look at the entries at Yonkers Raceway. Go look at those invoices that are available for anyone in the public to read. All those documents and purchases. Who do you think's filling the card?
Yeah.
Racing for the most money in the country right now. I believe Yonkers is the biggest purse. Is it right now? And it has to be in the country, not maybe North America. I don't know, but look what they're racing for.
Yeah.
Controlled by one individual, and you need to have permission from them, a blessing to race there. State generated revenue. A little conflict of interest. You mentioned conflict of interest. There's a lot of conflict of interest when it comes to these racetracks. And control of state funds, and you have to be approved by an individual who's not a state employee. It's crazy. Let me read this. There's someone else. Natalie Kaufman says, how disappointing you are basing this podcast on opinions and lies. I am open to allowing people that have concerns to speak their mind. And if that's opinions and lies, if you listened, doesn't mean I agree with what this gentleman is saying. If you have something to say in response to this, Natalie Kaufman, message me and come on live, and you can have the floor too. Start paying attention. Stop attacking.
I didn't know that the subsidies were a lie, but whatever. Or those invoices. I mean, those aren't fabricated. Those are evidence in a federal trial.
Listen to this. They're going, you make me sick. You are not a horseman. I am. You stop attacking. Attacking what? Reality? I'm responding to some of the statements you've made with some I've said over the past 3 years while doing this, which is harness racing needs to clean up its act and be accountable for itself and stop just continuing to take money to stand. All right. Do I think harness racing can be saved and the public wants to see harness racing anymore? No, because the time has changed. People under 40 would rather play video games and computer games and whatever online. It's a different time. Why do more people, you go to any racetrack that has VLTs, where are you going to find the most people? On the apron watching the races or at the machines pressing buttons?
Pressing buttons.
What? And that's because they think they got a better chance to win, and it's fair. They feel like they're in control, whether that's true or not. Now, let me see this. You are grouping a bunch of people based on one or two in this community. You're wrong, Natalie.
No,
I'm saying no. I think I don't know if she's just addressing what's happening at the fairgrounds. Like I said,
no, I said there was a lot of respectful people over there multiple times. It's a small percentage of the people that are the issue, but having someone that is the vice president of the Warren County Harness Horsemen's Association with a bunch of invoices on buying drugs probably isn't a good look for anybody.
Again, it goes with what I always thought when I started doing this. I thought I would have the backing of most of the people in the business who operate within the boundaries, care for their horses, don't use all this crap or do whatever the hell they're doing. And instead, I've met the most resistance I've ever seen anywhere. I don't know if they're afraid to expose it and clean it. I'm at a loss, and that's why with my this new approach is I want everyone that has an issue, like the people typing into the chat, send me a message, and if you want to speak your piece, tell me when you're available, and I'll get you on the phone. Speak your piece. This is the only friggin' way you're going to ever get anything resolved. Finally, it's going to take some confrontation, but you got to remember, in the end, if you people don't start working together to clean up your industry, not only will you lose your industry, you're going to lose your sport, and you're going to be racing pretty much only at fair tracks. Look at Michigan. Where's Northville Downs right now? They're actually advertising whatever this track is, Hastings, as Northville Downs because they've got the dates. You're racing for money that's being given by the state. The handle is to the point where that nobody wants to simulcast it, because who wants to simulcast races that are handling $600 a race? It's embarrassing.
Well, I got one better than that. Last year in 2024, we paid out $109,000 on the one day of harness racing we had.
Mm-hmm.
The handle was under $1,800.
No business and no business model on this planet survives that. I don't know what to say. And this is why, I try to say it without being cruel to these people. What makes you think you deserve this? So rather than being confrontational, step back and say, maybe people who are looking at it from this point of view are right, that, you know what, before this thing completely collapses, let's see if there's any possible way that we can eliminate the dirt bags and start to maybe bring people back to the races. You're up against it either way. And again, one of these days it's going to happen. Can any one of you people that are typing into the chat, tell me for certain that harness racing where you are is going to still be operating in 10 years?
Depends on who the elected officials of the state are.
But in the last 5 years, we've seen the biggest slide we've ever seen. This year, right now, USTA is reporting almost $100 million less in handle than compared to this time last year. I think it's like 8.9% less. Last year, it was down almost 12% from the year before. So look at that slide. So not only are purses dropping, losing racetracks, losing interest, losing its soul, begging for more money, and the money that it is generating through the windows has dropped over $200 million in the last 24 months. That's a lot of money when you're talking over 20%. What happens if the states start to pull? They'd sell it on agriculture here in New York State.
Same thing here.
Breeding farms, green, hay, this, horses that are manufactured to race horses, and then the next thing, I'm finding them by the friggin' hundreds in kill pens. And that's the truth. There's a lot of liberals out there that want this gone. There's a lot of really negative attention. The only reason that and let me just get away from this for a second. The only reason that I've been exposed to what's happening to the carriage horses in New York City is I found a standard bred that died there 3 years ago, and it was in the news. And it caught my attention because I saw his freeze brand. The only reason I ever went to Central Park, and it was to dispute Joe Feraldo on the whole idea of freeze brands being obsolete. Well, at least you can identify one just by looking at it. I don't need a chip reader. And then when I went there, I found a third of the horses at the time were standard breds, which opened my eyes to what's happening to the standard breds after the fact when they're done in harness racing. I never knew how bad it was and how many go to what I call the bad place. And that's when I realized, Jesus Christ, the states are actually supporting all this. That's what got me involved. It wasn't a hatred for harness racing. I love harness racing, but I won't have anything to do with it anymore.
Well, it's unfortunate, and we might disagree on this, which is fine. But, all these, I call them
Karen,
501c3 horse traders out there now. The rescue industry is hot. It's crazy what the bail is to get one out.
Mm-hmm.
With cattle prices today, let's figure out the withdrawal time on some of these drugs, and let's just start eating them when they're done. It would be the most humane thing we could do.
Well, Karen just typed in there. She sends all her horses to new vocations. Okay. There's some people, and
Karen has the money to do these things.
Yeah, but my point again is, everyone's taking this as a personal attack. It's not. It's addressing what nobody wants to address. Okay.
Yeah.
That the real end result of all this is horses are sent to die or live in terrible conditions. How about 2 weeks ago? The arrest made up in Oneida County that everyone said they knew about, going on forever, finally got to the right people. There was an investigation going on. Things seemed to have been slowing down. I made some calls, blah, 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 blah. Next thing, it sped back up. Now there's an arrest, 17 misdemeanors for animal cruelty in your industry. Again, Fred Bourgault is sitting in a jail 3 miles from here awaiting one more sentencing, and he's going to prison for beating one to death. My point again is this doesn't stop. And then when it is known and people know that these things are happening, nobody does anything about it. Those 17 horses got lucky. They were emaciated. In my opinion, if you know about it and did nothing about it, you're just as guilty as the person who starved the horses. Am I going too far here? I don't know. But you got to do something.
The whole slaughter deal is, if it was regulated, done here, handled appropriately, that's what needs to happen. We're not rescuing dogs and cats.
No, and I think these horses end up, even in some of this, the bigger rescues that emergency SOS, $571 hasn't, blah, 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 they finally get, and then the horse never gets placed, and at the end of the year, a whole bunch of horses are euthanized.
Well, the thing is the general population doesn't understand that they're not buying kill horses for $1,000. And I always, have to comment when we need $1,000 or the ships today. Well, if you guys are paying $1,000 cow, like, you guys should have a freight train full of horses for $1,000 a piece if you can ship them for that. And it's just a scam.
No,
they're not worth that.
And this is why when I created this new, railroading myself anymore into strictly harness racing. If anything, people say, I'm trying to get away from it. I'm creating something that's harness racing is just futile. It does nothing for anybody anymore, other than when I hear about something like what happened and I got the call about those horses, that I act when it directly affects the horses immediately. But again, my point is, it seems quarter horses, thoroughbreds, show horses. I mean, it happens everywhere. Okay.
In the riding horse world, it's very common, and I've been burned on it. You buy a horse at an auction, it's down the next day, and it happens, and in